I've done that in my career multiple times where I didn't go for the highest paying job. I didn't go for the best title, but it ended up helping me learn with the things that I needed to learn. And I actually accelerated my career, taking a step back in order to take 2 to 3 to 4 steps forward.
All right, we're back, building better portfolios, and this is our special series of quick takes where my co-host Josh Flade and I dig into some interesting topics outside of maybe building better portfolios. Our tagline to our podcast is building better lives. And so I think this series of quick takes really seeks to dive into some of those topics, things that Josh and I have either dealt with personally or hearing a lot of our kind of industry colleagues and friends ask these questions throughout their career. So today's topic is going to be fun. We're actually thinking about what is some of the worst career advice that you've ever received. So without further ado, let's just dive in because we try to be really punchy in these episodes. So Josh, let's give it to us straight. What is some of the worst career advice that you've ever received?
Yeah, I'm not going to name firms, but I was working for one firm.
But you can name names.
No. yeah, exactly. It's just like totally blast somebody. I was working at this firm, went to New York City. I'd been promoted as part of this promotion experience. You go to New York and you're with a number of other people, and they were bringing in other people to train you as part of, learning your new role and part of this promotion. And some of these people that came and gave this training, somebody asked them for some advice, and one of these trainers said something along the lines of, "Oh, whenever I get asked a question that I don't know the answer to, I just make something up with just absolute confidence, and that's my advice to you." And I remember sitting there thinking to myself, am I in an episode of The Office right now? Like, is this please tell me this is not actually legitimate advice that's being given. That's probably one of the worst pieces of career advice I've ever heard.
So it's funny that that's your worst career advice, because for those that do know me personally, that's kind of my MO. I feel like in my day-to-day, like my non-work life is like, I think I say things with such conviction that people are like, really? And I'm like, I don't know. But if you say it with conviction, people believe you. But no, I think,
true. Well, I guess it's true.
Yeah, no, I would say that is horrible career advice. And I feel I was lucky enough in my early days of my career to receive the opposite advice, which was really important. I was working at a trading desk, and I was always told, like, when dealing with money and trades and facts and data, whatever it might be, like, there is no room for error. If you tell a client something with conviction and you say it is true and it's not, like, you could lose the client, you can lose the business. And so I was always told that if you're in front of clients or a superior and you get asked something you don't know, to be honest up front and say, like, I don't know for a fact, or I don't know for certain, I will loop back with you, but here's what I might think. And I feel like that was actually really good career advice that I received, which is the exact opposite. So I guess that's good. Yeah, that's good that we're having this conversation. So do not lie, do not fabricate, and do not say things with conviction unless you have conviction in them.
Absolutely. And even that, I think that you could shift it a little bit, and you don't even have to say you don't know. You could even just say, I'm going to find out.
Yep.
And then, or say, I'm not 100% sure. Maybe this is what I would recommend based on what I know, but let me go find something. Let me go research this a little bit more and I'll get back to you.
Yep.
I think all of those ways are just very completely understandable ways to handle that.
I wonder where that person is now.
I don't know. I'm not even going to hypothesize where they're at. So that was that. What I don't know, Paisley. What about you? What's some of the worst career advice you've ever heard?
Yeah, I mean, when we were talking about putting this episode together, I became very grateful in the sense I feel like I've actually, for the most part, always worked with very honest, level-headed individuals at various levels at all of my firms. I think career advice, though, that I received early on from like a kind of superior or mentor was around kind of you come out of school, you get your first job, I mean, for 99% of us, it's not going to be your last job, right? So that means you're going on to a new firm, to a new role. And I think some career advice that was maybe not the worst, but was not advantageous for me, and I've seen that play out for others as well, was the advice that you have to stay in a job at a firm for X number of years. I say X because whether that's, 2 years or 10 years is a moot point. But I think this mentality of having to remain loyal to your employer is something a bit of like kind of the bygone era. I think that, back in, 10, 20, 30 years ago, you were rewarded for being loyal and staying at a firm. You had a pension, right? You had these defined benefit pensions where if you, had a long enough tenure at a firm, you were rewarded financially, you were taken care of, you had great benefits. And just the environment that we live in today, ultimately, I think at the end of the day, you have to take care of yourself, whether that's financially, meaning having to leave for higher compensation, whether that's personally needing to take on a new role that either is more fulfilling to you and maybe it's more stress and more responsibility, or on the opposite side of the spectrum is taking on a role that allows you to spend more time with your family or have more time where you're not a basket case. And so I think ultimately is like, if you're at a firm or in a role that is not allowing you to, be fulfilled in any of those capacities, to stick around because you think you owe it to your employer to do that. And I just think too, I mean, and especially in the post-COVID era, so many people are dealing with, family matters and health and stress and relocation, and everybody is maxed out. And like at the end of the day, like family personal life always comes before work. So not to like get totally off topic, this goes back to the advice though of, I've found myself personally staying in roles or at firms for far too long because I felt like if I just showed them that I was loyal and that I was in this for the long haul and I wanted us and the team and the firm to succeed, that I would be rewarded. Well, it turns out I wasn't in a lot of those cases. And so it's just an eye-opening experience. So I think that, making sure that you're fulfilled and you're taking care of yourself and your family before work, I think is really important.
Yeah, I've given the advice, and maybe this is the worst career advice these people have ever heard. So for
Yeah.
whatever that's worth,
Somebody somewhere is saying,
they're
hey, actually, that Josh guy gave me horrible career
yeah,
advice.
somebody somewhere is doing a podcast right now, and they're talking about the worst career advice, and I was the one.
Yeah.
No, the the sad reality is that at very large companies, I think it's really important to be loyal as an individual, and I would always err on being too loyal than to be not loyal enough. But at the same time, if a large company is going to need to do layoffs, and if your job is on the chopping block, as good of a friend as your manager may be, or like some of these people that you work with, your boss, whatever it may be, if they have to let you go, they're going to let you
Yeah.
go. And I think that you have to treat it in a somewhat similar situation, in the sense that if this is not serving you, or is fulfilling you in the way that it should be fulfilling you from a career perspective, I think it's okay to look somewhere else and find something else.
Yeah. Maybe on that note, too, is kind of an offshoot of that is the advice to just follow the money, which is a bit of a psychological dilemma in our industry, right? We're all here to make money for our clients and make money for ourselves. And we're all of us in some capacity are motivated by money. I'd be, kidding ourselves if we said otherwise. But I think there comes a point in your career, and it's not right out of school. I mean, coming right out of school, a lot of us are up to our ears in debt, and we, have to afford our first apartment on our own. And so, like, the difference of $10,000 or $20,000 is really important at that stage of our career. But as you get more experience and you start making decisions on where you're going to be in the team and the firm and the role, um, I've seen so many people chase money only to then just be kind of like in this revolving door of always needing then to go to the next spot. And I know that's one of the most difficult decisions that any of us make in our careers in any industry is a new opportunity. And if there are the opportunity to make more money by moving roles or firms, it's hard to say no to that. But I don't know, like, do you have thoughts? Like, have you encountered that yourself, Josh?
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts on this. One is I've seen people leave to try to make an extra 10, 15,000 at the next role. And then, but they end up hitting certain plateaus where they would have been better off just staying where they're at. As long as you're happy with the job, chasing money somewhere else may not get you where you want to be as fast. Where, for example, in this example, if they would have just stayed within a very short period of time, they would have been making that much money, and the growth opportunity above that was significantly more. But you sometimes have this, you just think in short term. And it reminds me of this really good piece of advice that is super finance related, which is you want to have a low discount rate on your life. And if you think about what is a discount rate is where you're trying to figure out how much is a dollar today versus a dollar in 10 years. And so if you have a high discount rate, then a dollar today is much more valuable than a dollar in 10 years. If you have a low discount rate, then a dollar today is the same as a dollar in 10 years. And so the idea here being that if you have a low discount rate on life, you're willing to sacrifice something now
Mm-hmm.
instead of being so focused on maximizing what you're doing right now. And so I think sometimes that includes taking a step that feels like maybe it's a step backwards in order to take two steps forward.
Yep.
And I've done that in my career multiple times where I didn't go for the highest paying job. I didn't go for the best title, but it ended up helping me learn with the things that I needed to learn. And I actually accelerated my career taking a step back in order to take 2 to 3 to 4 steps forward.
I love that. I think too, we're at a juncture in our career where this is probably easier for people to digest or understand. I think, if you're a year or two out of school, your environment is much different. But I think it's important to understand, like, as you move through your career and you get more experience, like these types of decisions that you'll have to make and that you can make will have different context around them, right? So again, the difference of $20,000 out of school is massive. But like what Josh and I are talking about is if you're mid-level, if you're senior level, is like just constantly chasing an extra, 20 grand here or 50 grand here, is likely probably not going to set you up for success. And I think another thing you said that's really important too is really seeking out the roles that are going to equip you with greater experience and more education and more background, so that when you do get to that role, whether it's your final role or somewhere you spend quite a bit of time, like having this like bigger picture to be able to add value instead of just like, oh, I've been running around from firm to firm to firm. Because there's a cost too, right? It's almost like buying and selling a house. It's like you can sell a house at for an extra $30,000 from when you bought it, but when you consider the closing costs and everything else that goes into that, all of a sudden you realize maybe you're net negative. And I think moving between jobs is a big part of that as well. You have to reinvent yourself. If you've been at a firm for X number of years, people know you, they trust you. And starting at a new firm brings on a lot of new stress, and you have to really prove yourself and work longer hours and have more face time. And yeah, I think that's super helpful too. Maybe like shifting this narrative too to be more positive, right? And we talked about some of like the good advice that we received. Something that I think has been really helpful for me. I've always been surrounded by people that see the value that I bring to the table and therefore push me and almost require me to move outside of my comfort zone. And I think that's some of the best advice that I've received, especially being a female in the industry, is kind of a bit of like the faking it till you make it. But ultimately that means is like taking on more risks in your career, being willing to put yourself out there versus just waiting for opportunities that are super easy to say, oh yeah, I'm capable of that, or I can take that on, or I'm ready for this. And I think that insecurity is not just a gender thing. I think men face that as well in our industry, but
No,
no,
just kidding.
Josh is like, my ego is so big, so no.
I think you're right. You're never ready. Nobody is
No.
ever ready. And so it's just, are you ready to start now? That's the only ready that you need to be.
Yep. I love that.
Yeah. I no. The one thing I'll add really quickly is the one piece of career advice that I really appreciated was trying to find somebody where you're at that's 10 years ahead of you. and then model your career after them. And if you don't find somebody where you're at that's 10 years ahead of you, then it may not be the best place for you. That may be a little bit of a sign that this may not be the best place for you if you can't find somebody who's 10 years ahead of you and you want your career to be like them.
I love that. That's a perfect place to end because, again, these are quick takes, so we try to be quick. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Hopefully you found this valuable, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Thanks, Paisley.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the host and do not reflect the views, opinions, or policies of any current or former employer, affiliated firm, or client. The content is provided for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered investment, legal, or tax advice. Nothing discussed constitutes a recommendation to buy or sell any securities or investment products. Listeners should conduct their own research or consult with a qualified professional before making any financial decisions. The hosts are speaking solely in their personal capacities, and the podcast is not affiliated with, sponsored by, or endorsed by any firm or organization with which they may be associated.